This week, I thought of learning a different topic, the topic of Hafrashat Chala. And why Hafrashat Chala? Our parashat Shlach. So we have Parashat Shlach, and it connects a bit to what we've been learning about the bracha of Hamotzi. You'll see there's a small link there between them. It might be two different topics, and some of the Rishonim, Rabbeinu Tam, wants to link between them. So we'll get to that also, hopefully. And let's begin from a parasha. What happens in the parasha? So we have the spies, Parashat Shlach, right? They're in the desert and they send the 12 spies to Israel, and 10 come back, say we can't go to Israel, it's too hard for us, there's big people there, there's giant people that bring this giant fruit, and they say we can't go to the land of Israel. Then Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem says, I'm not going to destroy them, they're going to stay in the desert for 40 years, and after that, the children will come in. After the parasha of the spies, the Meraglim, we have 5 different mitzvot. A few of them, it's like teasing someone. It's like, let's say you have a baseball team that just didn't win the cap, the golden cap, and you show them the golden cap of the other team and say, can you see this? You could have won it. Yeah, you see. They have a few mitzvot which has some kind of this aspect. One of them is Hala. Why Chala? Because the mitzvah is when you come into the land of Israel. So it's like telling the people, you know what, you didn't go into the land of Israel, but there's a mitzvah for people who aren't like you, maybe your children, who will go into the land of Israel. So that brings a question, maybe we'll discuss it on Shabbat, whoever joins us on the shiur. What's happening here? Why is Hashem or Moshe teasing the people and telling them, you aren't going to go to the land of Israel, you're going to die here, but there is a mitzvah for going to the land of Israel? Hi, Danny. Shalom. And what we do get from it is that there's something in Chala which comes to fix the problem of the spies. And the spies maybe wanted to disconnect them from the land of Israel. And the idea of Chala is to connect us to the land of Israel. If you want to say it even deeper, the idea of Chala is to connect the physical world, which is symbolized by bread. And we spoke about brachot. We said many times, what's the main part of the meal in the halachic perspective? Bread. I think if I ask some people today, people who like meat, they'll say, meat, right? We just eat bread on the side just so we can be a bit satisfied. But that's for some people. But halachically, this is parasha. So halachically, bread is the main part of the meal, and that's the staple. That's many people see it like that.
The difference of the status of this mitzvah in Eretz Yisrael.
Yes, that's a great question. So is there a difference between the mitzvah and Israel? I know. So from Torah perspective, this mitzvah is only in the land of Israel. From the Torah's perspective. This mitzvah is interesting. Most of the mitzvot which depend on the land of Israel, let's say Trumot u'Maasot, taking tithe from the fruit. If the fruit grew in Israel, it's obligated in Trumot u'Maasot. What happens if the fruit grew in Israel and I took it out of Israel? No, still, of course, yes, still Trumot u'Maasot. Okay. If that's a good question. We don't give Trumot u'Maasot. Yeah, but it is a good question. Yeah, so yeah, that's just a Chala, right? It's true. What happens the opposite? If I have imported fruit, do I need to take Trumot u'Maasot? No. Okay, no Trumot u'Maasot. Typically, the mitzvah, which depends on the land, it depends where the fruit grew. The same for Orla. We're a bit more lenient with Orla in Chutz La'aretz than Israel. It depends where the tree grew. It doesn't matter where the fruit is now. Chala is different. Chala depends where I make the dough. So in Chala, making the dough, and we'll get to it soon even more, making the dough, that is what makes the Chala obligated in Chala, making the dough. So if I have flour that came from overseas, and I make it here in Israel, like I think most of our wheat comes from overseas, we give challah in the times of Torah, midoraita, midoraita. If we grew wheat in Israel and we took it out of Israel, no mitzvah of challah, midoraita, midoraita. So here we see that what makes the obligation of challah is making the dough in Israel. So there's something about the dough itself. It's not a grain. It's not just a food of animals. It's a basic part of a person. What people eat, the dough. Think of the idea. Who had this strange idea of making dough? When you think about it, taking an apple. Okay, I see a nice fruit. It makes sense that I see an animal eating an apple. Also, I'll taste the apple. Okay, maybe even cooked apple. Makes sense. There's a fire. I put it next to the fire. Okay, even meat. To make challah, I need to take the wheat, dry the wheat. That still maybe makes sense. Grind it. Why should I grind it? And then think of mixing it with water, letting it rise. Why should I let it rise? There's quite a bit of mind and thought into baking, right? So people say that it's quite invention about of thinking of baking it and all the process.
Is noted in the Torah.
Yeah, the process. Yeah, it is not in the Torah. Yeah, I'm saying it's more of a human thing, not an animal thing. There's so many stages in between where can you eat flour? We don't need flour. What's the bracha on flour? Shakol, right? Why shakol? Who eats flour, right? Who eats flour? The bracha is shakol.
So maybe there wouldn't be a bracha at all.
No, so since we still gain from it, so the bracha is shakol. Even dough, maybe. Who eats dough? Okay, kids eat dough. Okay, fine. But besides that, I mean, who eats dough? So there's so many stages. There's something special about making the dough and baking it. So midoraita, in the times when we had the Mikdash, when all the people of Israel were in Israel, what creates the obligation of challah is making the dough. We'll get to amounts very soon. From the 5 grains. Any flour from the 5 grains. Oat flour is 5 grains, right? Yeah. So people who keep gluten and they get special oat flour, they can do challah. Yeah. Still chayav in challah. Since it's such an important hummus flour, no. Yeah. No, only from the 5 grains. And since you just asked about it, if we have a mixture of challah, if we a mixture of flours. So we have a mixture of coconut flour and wheat flour, for example. Okay, so we have to have the amount of flour. We'll get to amounts very soon. We take challah only if we have, let's say we need 1.6 kilograms to take challah. So if we have 1.6 kilograms in all that dough from wheat flour, then we can take challah. So, okay. I'll say since challah is such an essential part of food, and it's on one hand tied to the land, but on the other hand not so tied to the land, because even if I take wheat from out of Israel and bring it to Israel, it's obligated in challah, and a few other reasons. So our sages said that also in chutz la'aretz, one should take challah. Also in chutz la'aretz. So also out of Israel we take challah. That's rabbinical. Even in the times of the Mesa Mikdash, it was rabbinical. We won't go into it now, but there used to be times where the Kohen used to take 2 challahs out of Israel. He used to take 2 challahs and give 1 piece to the Kohen and 1 piece burn. We won't go into it now, since in any case the custom also out of Israel, the common custom is you take just 1 piece of challah and burn it or throw it. We'll explain hopefully soon. Okay. Now let's go into Chala. Okay, so let's go into Chala and to a few topics of Chala. And the main thing we'll try to learn today is amounts. Okay, how much do I need to have Chala? And that's connected a bit to last week's parasha. Last week's parasha, we mentioned the man, right? The man, and also in Parashat Shalach, we mentioned the man. The man was, the measurement of it was an omer, something which is called an omer. And the measurement of volume, goes by volume of an omer of flour. So if you have flour in the volume of an omer, that's obligated in Chala. Again, when is it obligated? Not when it's flour, only when I mix it up with water. Okay, so if I have a measurement of an omer of flour, which I then make into a dough, then it is obligated in Chala. And we have here a question. How much is an omer? Okay, that's the question. First, how much is an omer? There's an argument between the Chazon Ish and the Grach Na'eh. We see it in Lulav, for example, or Hadas. It's based on the same idea. How long should the Hadas be? Right? We're getting a bit closer to Sukkot. Hadas, 30 centimeters, 24 centimeters, where the sukkah should be at least 10 tefachim high, and lavud. How much is it? How much is the tefach? 8 centimeters, close to 10 centimeters. And the part of that argument is the omer. How much is an omer? That's one question. Second question, we measure it by volume. Right, measure it by volume. Now, does any one of you here bake? No. Okay, yeah, you bake? So if I take flour, okay, and mix the flour up, it puffs up, right? So I have the same volume, but and then when I sift it, so what happens to it? It puffs. It falls slowly and puffs up, right? When I there's a miracle, right? I take a kilo of flour, put it through the sifter, and all of a sudden I have more, right? If I go by volume, if I go by weight, obviously it stays the same. And the question here is, well, we need the volume of an omer, whatever that it is. Okay, whatever that is. Let's say it's 2.2 liters. Let's say, how much is an omer in weight? Do we go by puffed challah? So do we go by puffed flour? I mean, or do we go after it's squeezed and sits in the supermarket with tens of kilos on it and gets squeezed and so what do you measure? So we have here two arguments or two questions. First, what's the size of an omer? And here we have a difference between the Grach Na'eh and the Chazon Ish. And second, even after I know how much an omer is, how do we measure? By compressed flour or no? So that's the two questions we have. Therefore, lechatchila, if one's making challah, they should have 2.1 or 2.2 kilos of flour. And then for sure we have enough amount of flour, and that's the best thing. That's the best thing.
That's an omer.
So that's a whole topic of it. But the Rambam has measurements. It has an omer is 43 beitzim. Okay, the eggs. So based on other measurements we have, we know how much an omer is. And the Rambam really went to it and said it's a measurement, some kind of coin that the Rambam mentioned. The problem is that the coin was changed through the years. Okay, so we don't. That's why we don't have an exact measurement. So, it's a change. Yes, so we have all questions here about the measurements. So therefore, lechatchila, we should have 2.2 kilos of flour. Then for sure we can take with a bracha. Okay. Another thing which I didn't mention. There's a difference between the different kinds of flour. From shibboleth shual, from oats, it's a lighter flour. It takes up more volume. From wheat, it's a heavier flour. It's more dense. Okay, so also that's another question. But let's say I'm using just wheat. Okay, just for wheat.
Because it's weight, not volume.
Because the measurement is in volume. For us, it's easier to measure by weight.
Volume is size, and weight is
right. But the way the grains of oats, and after you grind it, it's lighter. It takes up more space compared. Right. So therefore, if I go by kilos, now I'm transferring to kilos. Okay, if I go by kilos, so we should have the best thing is to have 2.2 kilos of flour. And then for sure, everyone you can say a bracha. That's
all types
of flour. Yeah, all types of flour. Yeah, all of them. If I have 1.6 or 1.65 kilos of flour, according to many poskim, even then I can say for bracha. 1.6. If I have less than that, so let's say the measurement of 1.2. 1.2 kilos of flour. So from 1.2 kilos of flour, I take challah without a bracha. From 1.6 or 1.65, I take challah with a bracha. Okay, and the best thing.
1.2 and 1.6.
Yeah, without a bracha.
Don't do it.
No, without a bracha. Do it without a bracha. Okay, and you say between 1.6 and 2.2, then if you're already doing 1.6, so do 1.2.
Then you're okay.
Yeah. So that's the measurements. And here comes a common question. Very common. That brings us to more of a wider question. But beforehand, let's learn halacha beforehand. Let's say I'm doing 2 small pieces of dough. Okay, on Pesach, have you ever baked matzah? Yeah. So how many kilos of flour do we bake in one time?
Always measure that.
It's measured out. So we usually do about a kilo of flour in one time. Why is that? It's matzah. We want to move all the time. It's hard to deal with a big amount of dough. So do a kilo at a time. Kilo at a time. It's too small, right? You can't take challah from 1 kilo. After I take pieces of dough. Okay, say also at home, it's too hard for me to knead 2 kilos. So what do? I do 1 kilo and then another kilo. Okay, so and it's easier. And those 2 pieces of dough, can they connect to each other? That's one question. Second question, until when can they connect to each other? When they are dough, after they're baked, until when do they connect to each other? Okay, so let's start from the second question because that's more of a simple answer. Until when do the doughs connect to each other? And the answer is until you eat them. Even if I have huge baked goods already, they can still combine and become one piece of challah. And also here let's say I forgot to take challah. I baked it already. What do I do with the bread now?
That's good.
I baked the challah. What do I do now? I take off a piece. I can take the best time to take challah is while it's dough, when it's still dough.
And can you make a motzi, Shabbat motzi on it? If you take it?
I can't separate challah on Shabbat.
1 o'clock.
Challah on Shabbat.
No, 9 o'clock. 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
10
So
o'clock.
the best time to separate the challah is when it's baked, before it's baked. But even after it's baked, I can separate the challah. We had once a story when I was a child. My mother made chalot for Rosh Hashanah. It's made chalot for Rosh Hashanah, and round chalot. There's a custom to make round chalot, and comes Rosh Hashanah, and she realized this. She forgot to take challah, separate challah. The question is, what does she do now? What do we do? Can we separate challah on Rosh Hashanah or no? The answer is no. So my father went to ask the rabbi, what do we do? Okay, what do we do? So the rabbi said, well, there's a custom to bake challah, round challah for Rosh Hashanah. My wife baked regular challah for Rosh Hashanah. She realized that after she finished baking, that she baked a regular challah. So she did another batch to bake round challah. So now we have in the freezer spare challah that we don't need for Rosh Hashanah because of the custom of having round challah for Rosh Hashanah. So we took the challah. But if it wouldn't have been Rosh Hashanah, we could just take off a slice and separate it. Okay, so that's the answer about when the challah can combine to be one dough, even after they're baked. And here comes more of a question which is very practical. You'll see soon can be quite practical. How do we combine those 2 pieces of dough? So you baked matzah. What do you do making matzah? Each time I bake 1 kilo. How do you take challah from matzah?
Before you bake it.
So they take it after you bake it. From matzah, you take it after you bake it. Because each time you bake only 1 kilo. 1 kilo, not enough, right? Not enough. You can't. After they bake the whole matzah, most people don't notice it because it happens outside around the oven there. Usually there's a table. You put all the matzah on one table, and then you cover it. You cover it. Yeah, right? So covering it makes it to be like in one container. Now that it's one container, it's all as if connected. You take one of the matzot and take challah from all of it with a bracha. So one way to connect challah is to put it in one container. Okay, a container has to have all sides to it. Or if it's a table like this, you cover it with something. Okay, so that's one way of combining challah. Another way is if the 2 doughs are touching each other. Not only they're touching each other, they're also like stuck to each other. And if you pull one, you'll be pulling also some of that one. So that's 2 ways to combine challah. And here comes the question, which that's what I'm heading for. Your wife or you made 2 doughs. Each dough is a kilo. Okay, each dough is a kilo. A dough of whole wheat bread. Okay, whole wheat bread, and a dough of spelt. Okay, dough of spelt. Now after you bake them, you put it in one container. Do they become one or no? Or like,
You want to say yes? Or-
yeah?
I would say yes.
Why yes?
For the same reason as the matzah.
Because it becomes in one container, right? So on one hand, it's in one container. So I might think maybe it comes together.
Except they're two different types.
It's
of,
two different types. So here we have another thing which is very, very important. Are we concerned or do we care if the two pieces of dough mix with each other? If we don't care about them mixing with each other, okay, but have this dough and this dough, and it happens to be that I just did it in two containers because it was easier for me to knead it, and so they can combine. But if I want my whole wheat to be whole wheat and the white to be white, I don't want them to connect to each other. I don't want them to mix up with each other. So then they do not connect to each other, even if they are one. So if it mixes it up, so that's chayav b'chas. It's obligated, right? Yeah, comes one dough. But that could be, for example, I'll give you an example where it might be, we are a bit machmir that the oven is considered as like one container. Okay, so we won't go now into an oven just because of time, but the oven or the freezer, okay, we look at it as one container, although we won't go into it now, although it's separated. But with so let's say I made spilled challah, I made whole wheat challah, I made a kilo of each. And to make it more interesting, I made babkas. Babkas, that's how you call the cake? Babka. I made babka. Another kilo of babka. Okay, that's white flour because I can't make babka from something healthy, right? That's not called a babka, right? So now I have in my freezer 3 kilos of baked goods, spilled, whole wheat, and unhealthy babka. Do I need to take challah from them? Okay, I need to take challah. If it's one container, and so maybe it does. Maybe I don't need to take challah because it connects to one. We say that if I care about the doughs, I don't want them to mix up with each other, so they don't connect, even if I put them in one container.
Is that just because of the babka that was added to it, or did that?
No, because usually I have
Does that go with the two breads as
the
well?
two breads. Even if I have the same kind of flour, one of them has spices, the other one doesn't have spices. I don't want them to mix up. I want them to be separated. So it doesn't. It's separated. And here comes something which is important and many people don't know. That's maybe one of the reasons I brought this shiur. Even if I have one piece of dough, I have a 2 kilo piece of dough here, and my plan is to separate it before baking, and as soon as separated, I wanted it to stay separated. That is between people. That's considered 2 pieces of dough, and I don't take challah. I'll give you a very common example for kids in Gan. Okay, the Ganinit has a huge pile of dough. Each kid, now it's a big pile of dough, 2 kilos. Before we bake it, each kid gets their own small piece of dough. Small piece of dough does not have challah inside it. The kid makes his shape or whatever it is, and then writes the name on the challah, or next to the challah. So while it's still dough, it was separated to different people, and they wanted to stay separated. Okay, so since they wanted to stay separated, it's 2 different kinds of dough. So the ganenet shouldn't take challah. And another very common example, women sometimes get gathered together to have the mitzvah of Hafrashat chala. So they have one piece of baked dough there. If they don't mind, if they bake it together, and then after it's baked, they'll just divide it, and they don't care who takes what. So that's fine. We have a piece of challah. It's like mixed. But if before they bake it, each one takes her own piece, makes her own one small piece of challah, writes her name or remembers the shape of it and says, that's mine, and I want this one and not this one, and each piece doesn't have the amount of challah, you don't take challah from it. So that's a common halacha, which many people don't know. So that when we have a big piece of challah and we want to separate it between different people before baking, and each one cares about the dough, we do not take challah with a bracha.
If this was a Hafrashat challah event, and these women wanted to do it despite all these other circumstances, would they be over on a Neveira?
If there's a place of Hafrashat challah, when Hafrashat challah, and they take challah with a bracha, when you're not supposed to say bracha, so that might be a bracha levatala. Now here's two solutions you can give. One, when I did events with my students, that's what I made sure. I made for myself always two kilos or 5 pounds. In the States, okay. So I had for myself 2 kilos. I took challah for bracha. That's my dough. Here we have the amount, and so another option that we mentioned. You can take the big pile of dough and separate it, divide it between people, as long as the women don't care if they mix up the doughs afterwards. If I take your challah and you take my challah and they get mixed up, so we don't care so much about the separation. We separated because we can't bake a huge piece of challah, but really it wasn't separated in the mindset of us.
Now at some of these challah bakes, they started preparing all the dough there, and then the ladies would bring the challah home to bake.
Right. So in such a case, you can't say if you can't take challah for bracha.
Because those would truly be separate.
Yeah, unless like I used to do with my students. Unless I have one big piece of challah which stays mine, and I take challah from it for bracha. Let's just mention one more halacha. Maybe we have time for 2 more halachot. What do we do with the challah that we separated? What do we do with it? So burn it. So the best thing would have been to give it to a kohen. That's why we take challah, not just to give it to a kohen. And then it creates connection to us and the kohen, and he comes to our house and we give him bread. That's the best thing to do. But we don't have kohenim today, and the challah isn't tahor. Okay, so that's why also is take a smaller amount than what we used to take in the times of the mikdash, which was about 4%. Today we take just about an egg more or less volume. Okay, so what do we do with it? The best thing will be halachically to burn it. That's the best thing it will be. But technically, it's a bit hard. First, if you burn it on the gas, the house starts smelling, right? If you burn it on a tray, on a food tray, some will say, wait, this food tray absorbs taste of challah, which we aren't supposed to be eating. It's supposed to be burnt. So now we can't use this food tray. So you can put it maybe on the bottom of the oven. Okay, so halachically, the best thing will be to burn it. I once saw somewhere in Jerusalem, there was a container somewhere on the street with people used to put the challah inside, and once every few days, people used to come and collect it and burn it. Another very good solution, which we do it, people do it, is you wrap it in 2 wraps and throw it in the bin. That's a very good solution. And one more halacha, which we won't go into the details, just say that there's such an option of doing, and that happened to me once also with students. They made challah, and they separated the challah, and there were a few people making it together, especially a few boys maybe, and then mistakes happen. What happened? By mistake, they took the challah, made it into a bread roll, and threw it with all the other bread rolls. What do we do now? What do you do? I have a bread roll mixed with everyone. But you have here challah, which is supposed to be burnt, and it's mixed up. You have a mixture here. So challah is batel only if we have 100 against it. Usually we need a 60. In challah we need 1 out of 100. Usually we do not have 1 out of 100. And here we have a solution. As I said, we won't go into it. There's an option to do hatarat nedarim. Okay, so you call the rabbi, tell him to do hatarat nedarim, and challah masot are considered like a neder, as if we have a neder of separating the challah. Sorry, I'm making it to be a challah. This is an option. So if that happens, so you know there's an option to do. Don't take another piece of challah. Call the rabbi, and with another 2 people, they'll do hatarat nedarim, and that's the solution. So we went a bit over challah. One more halacha, just because I said it's a bit connected to brachot. Lachok, we mentioned all kinds of dough, which if we say amotzi, don't say amotzi. Pancakes. Let's say I do a huge amount of pancakes. Do I separate challah from it or no? So if I usually ask people no, because we don't make a big amount of pancakes. If I make a big amount of pancakes in a camp, and I put all the pancakes in one container, so I'll take challah from it. Okay, so
what is a big amount of pancakes?
that I have, as I said, 2.2 kilos of flour, 1.6 kilos of flour from.
Camp,
So that could be, that's possible, right?
I make huge batches of pancakes.
How much flour do you have?
Not that.
No,
There's not
okay.
a lot less, but that's
Okay.
always
Yeah.
pretty floaty.
So that's
Somebody freezing?
okay. So
I don't eat right away. I eat a lot of pancakes.
Yeah,
I like come over.